I think I'm at some kind of, I'm prepared for a lot of sort of arrows coming my way, because as a maker, and people don't have very nice things to say about television serials in general, and I don't blame them. But there's a lot that really goes on behind the scenes. I'd just like to share a small bit about my personal journey first. My first successful show, which was very acclaimed, was a show called Astitva Ek Prem Kahani. Now that was, I think, just after Tara. In fact, Vinta had a huge role at that point of time in getting it through. And it was such a bold theme that, entire team actually felt that it cannot last more than 6 months. And we were on air for over 3 years. So that itself was a big achievement. But personally, it was much easier for me to relate to the protagonist of that show. She was an urban woman, she was a working woman, and she was walking that tightrope between wanting a good, happy family life, as well as maintaining a career, which I think was a very advanced thought for 15 years or 18 years ago. When Balika Vadhu came to me, as in the creator, the one whose concept it is, Mr. Purnendu Shekhar. So when he came to me, we had worked together on this very emancipated show together earlier. And I said a lot of no's to this show, because I felt initially that I pride myself in being a writer who first must feel about the cause. Later I read about the Sabido method in Mexico, etc., where the entire focus is on making your audience feel rather than think, because the thinking can come at a later stage, or the thinking is more subliminal, but they must feel for your characters. And I wasn't honestly feeling for this child bride. I didn't come from that kind of a background. I wasn't giving my daughter that kind of an upbringing. And then I took it as a mere challenge, and I kind of, as I did more and more research, I found that my notions about it doesn't really happen in India, or who would like to see a show about this? I had all those questions which I get asked now. Now, the only way you can battle this, and I'm not saying I've been 100% successful, but even if I've been 50% successful, is that at least I empathized. If I as a writer do not feel, how do I expect my viewers to feel and my viewers to think? So I forced myself, I trained myself to feel for the subject, the characters, the peripheral characters, etc. And then I could at least battle to quite an extent with the forces that pull you down. Of course, increasingly it's becoming very, very difficult. There's a lot of gloss, there were a lot of tricks which we did in the show, and which we have to do across all shows to make them more palatable. Out of the 7.5 years of Balika Vadhu, nearly 8. Initially, because the show was getting good numbers, it was a very smooth run. But gradually, the entire scenario of the TRPs, monitoring, feedback coming to us, we had this, minute by minute analysis of every episode. And so that was a very mind-boggling thing, because you are feeling for a certain character or a certain track, but when you're sitting to write your next lot of episodes, you're saying, this scene of this track and this character, the TRP has fallen. So should I really be writing this, or should I sideline this and go on to something else? So these were the kind of pressures that increased over the years. Even I'm talking about a long-running show like this. Initially it was a certain way, and it became more and more challenging to continue that way. The male inclusive part of any of the campaigns. This morning we saw Denver's film on the little boys who, bought the packet of sanitary napkins and left it outside the door. Now I've been just analyzing the power of using boys instead of girls. I think it's not a matter of, when Pink came, the film Pink, I was just trying to imagine that if it hadn't been Mr. Bachchan and it had been a woman, as would have been the cliched perhaps way of casting, it would not have had the impact that it had. It's because it was a revered figure like him. So I think we need as women to be as selfish as possible and use whatever gender, whatever color, whatever way we have, if it is going to give out the right message. That's one point. And yes, I'm going to do a little humble brag, as someone put it yesterday. In Balika Vadhu, we had quite a battle with the channel because we were following the linear journey of Anandi, who was married at 8 years into this family, and she, at some point in the story, we wanted to touch the issue of menstruation. What happens when a girl who would most naturally want to go and hug her mother, or she's frightened, or she would want some help, some advice, and she would want to know what's going on with her. It's frightening for most girls, especially those who haven't been warned about it. And that's the case in most families. And what happens to a girl who is in her in-laws' house with this family which believes that at a time like this, a girl should be sleeping on the floor, a girl should be eating separately, making her feel much worse than she was feeling because of her physical state. So we touched upon that issue, and we came in for a lot of mixed response, I would say, from the people. Some parts of the audience felt it was wonderful, some felt it was off-putting, etc., etc. But just trying to give this example that it's also possible, like in the case of Balika, when we, yes, it was initially about child marriage, but we linked it and it became a vehicle for a lot more than child marriage. And that's how organically storytelling needs to unfold. I certainly don't represent channels and I don't approve of everything that goes on inside them, but just an observation that, there are times when the channels have said, okay, now we want a Muslim social. A special program based on a Muslim family, probably going to be given the 10:30 slot, because in any case, most Hindus will not watch it. So can you write a Muslim social? So they have segregated it. It's not integrated into the stories and the characters which are already ongoing. And if they are, it's just lip service. They're just standing around. They're peripheral characters. They're certainly not woven into the story. That's discouraged.